My grandfather's farmhouse had no furnace, no ductwork, and no thermostat on the wall, and every room in that house, even the upstairs bedrooms, stayed warm through a northern winter. That should not have been possible with one wood stove and a family with far less money than we have today. But it was possible, because the house itself was built to move heat, and almost nobody builds houses that way anymore. Picture a typical farmhouse kitchen on a January morning in the northern plains 100 years ago. The kitchen range has been banked overnight, coals kept alive under a bed of ash, so the first person awake only has to add kindling and open a damper rather than start a fire from nothing. That kitchen was not just where food was cooked. It was the engine room of the entire house, and every design decision around it existed to move the heat that room produced as far through the building as possible, for as long as possible, without wasting a single log more than necessary. Before central heating existed, a family in the northern United States or the Canadian prairies usually had one real heat source in the entire house. A single wood stove or a masonry fireplace, almost always on the ground floor, expected to warm every room above and around it through months of sub-zero nights. On paper, that sounds impossible. In practice, thousands of these houses are still standing today, and many of them are still warm, because the design solved a problem that modern construction stopped thinking about. Every one of these choices got tested every single autumn, whether a family wanted it to or not. October was not just harvest season. It was the month the entire house got prepared for the coldest stretch ahead, checking that every register still drew properly, that the vestibule door still latched tight, that the woodpile was deep enough to outlast whatever the winter decided to bring. None of it was optional, and none of it was guesswork by the time a family had lived through a few hard winters in the same house. The first trick was the staircase itself. In most farmhouses built before the 1930s, the stairs did not sit behind a closed door in a separate hallway. They opened directly onto the main living space, usually within a few feet of the stove. That open stairwell worked like a chimney running in reverse. Instead of losing warm air outside, the stairwell pulled it straight upward, and it pooled in the upstairs hall, where even the bedroom door left cracked open overnight let enough heat drift in to keep the room livable until morning. The second trick was the floor register, and this is the one almost nobody recognizes today. It was not a mechanical vent connected to any furnace. It was simply a cut section of floorboard covered with a decorative iron or brass grate, set directly above wherever the stove or the kitchen range sat below. Hot air rising through that opening needed no fan and no ductwork at all. Families across northern Missouri, the Dakotas, and the Prairie provinces of Canada built entire second floors around one or two of these openings, and needed nothing else to keep bedrooms above freezing through a hard winter. The third piece was the shape of the house itself. The largest, most central room, usually the kitchen or the main living room, was almost always the room that held the stove, and it was rarely tucked into a corner. It sat where heat could radiate outward in every direction, connected to the rest of the house by wide doorways instead of narrow hallways, so warm air could move freely from room to room instead of stalling the moment it hit a doorway. Some farmhouses went further and left transom windows above interior doors, small hinged panes that could be propped open to let heat pass between rooms, even while the doors themselves stayed shut for privacy. And the fourth piece, the one that is almost completely absent from modern homes, was the airlock entry, a small enclosed porch, sometimes no bigger than a closet, set in front of every exterior door that saw regular traffic. Anyone coming in from outside opened one door, stepped into that small buffer space, and closed it behind them before ever opening the interior door. That single design detail meant the house never lost a blast of heated air every single time someone walked in from the cold, all winter long, with no moving parts and no cost beyond the lumber to build it. Families went further still in the coldest stretch of the season. Rooms not used daily, a formal parlor, a spare bedroom were often closed off entirely. A heavy quilt or blanket hung over the doorway in place of a door that no longer sealed well, so the stove never had to waste a single log heating space nobody was sitting in. Pocket doors, common in farmhouses of that era, served the same purpose, letting a family shrink the heated footprint of the house down to only the rooms actually in use on the coldest nights. then open the house back up again once the weather broke. And at bedtime, a soapstone or cast iron bed warmer, heated on the stove and wrapped in cloth, slid between the sheets an hour before anyone climbed in, meant a cold upstairs bedroom still delivered a warm bed, even on a night when the floor register alone could not quite keep pace with the wind outside. Put those pieces together, and a single wood stove, burning a fraction of the fuel a modern furnace runs through in a season, could keep a full 2-story farmhouse livable through a prairie winter that regularly dropped well below zero. None of this looked identical from one region to the next either. A New England salt box house sloped its roofline low toward the north to shrug off wind and cut the exposed wall facing the coldest direction, while a prairie farmhouse in the Dakotas or the Canadian plains was often built nearly square, minimizing exterior wall surface relative to the space it enclosed, since there was no coastline to hide from, and every wall lost heat. The same way in an open, treeless landscape, families building in these different regions were solving the same underlying problem: heat retention with minimal fuel, but they arrived at slightly different shapes depending on the wind, the available lumber, and what had already been proven to work by the neighbors who built before them. Here is the mistake most people make when they hear this story. They assume it was about a bigger stove, or thicker walls, or more insulation than we give those old houses credit for. It was not. It was about where the heat was allowed to travel once it existed. That is the part modern construction got wrong, and it is also the part that is fixable without rebuilding a house from the studs out. A floor register can still be installed between almost any 2 stacked rooms that share an old chimney chase or a duct run, and hardware suppliers who specialize in historic restoration still sell cast iron and wood-trimmed versions built for precisely this purpose. An enclosed vestibule does not need to be architecturally ambitious. Even a modern storm door, mounted a few inches in front of the main door with dead airspace between them, cuts a noticeable amount of heat loss on a windy day, the same principle the old mudroom relied on. Closing off a spare room in the coldest months, the way families did a century ago, still works exactly as well today and costs nothing but the willingness to skip heating a room nobody is using. Heavy thermal curtains hung over doorways rather than only over windows are the direct modern descendant of that quilt over the doorway trick, and they are sold today by the same companies that make blackout curtains at a fraction of the cost of sealing off a room permanently. And if you are searching for a house that already has some of these features built in, older listings and local historical societies are often the best source, since original blueprints and preservation records will show exactly where a house's original floor registers, transoms, and vestibules were placed long before a renovation ever covered them over. The families who built these houses were not guessing, and they were not doing it because it looked charming. They were solving a problem with the materials available to them, in a climate that would genuinely put lives at risk if they got it wrong. And they solved it well enough that their houses are still standing, and in some cases still warm, more than 100 years later without a single duct running through the walls. If your own house has rooms that stay cold no matter how high you turn up the furnace, it is very likely not your imagination, and it is very likely not a problem more heat will fix. It is 100 years of construction habits working quietly against you every winter. Before you assume the fix is a bigger furnace or a higher bill, it is worth walking your own house the way an old builder would have, room by room, asking not how to add more heat, but where the heat you already have is being allowed to go, and where it is being stopped for no good reason. Most of these fixes cost far less than a single month of a modern heating bill, and none of them require tearing into a wall. They require noticing what a house is already trying to do and getting out of its way. Thanks for watching, and if you want more of the forgotten methods that kept northern families through the hardest winters, subscribe for the next one. Tell me in the comments if your own house still has an old floor register, an open stairwell, or a mudroom nobody uses anymore. I want to know what's still standing in your part of the country.